In this final section of the chapter, we're going to talk about how to take the results of our studies and use them wisely. Usually when researchers are conducting a statistical study, they want to draw conclusions from the data. In other words, they want to make inferences to a broader population. For example, the U.S. Census Bureau carries out a monthly current population survey. They survey about 60,000 houses across the United States every month, and the goal is to use these randomly selected households to estimate things about the whole population of all U.S. households. In another example, scientists performed an experiment involving 21 volunteer subjects between 18 and 25 years old. Each subject is randomly assigned to one of two treatments, sleep deprivation for one night or unrestricted sleep, and they want to see how sleep deprivation causes a decrease in performance. Right? The inferences that we can make, whether or not we can apply them to a broader population, depends on the type of study that it is. Let's start by taking a closer look at that Census Bureau survey where they randomly selected 60,000 households across the United States from a population of all U.S. households. When we select a sample at random, our sample should be representative of the population. Whatever estimate we get for example, an unemployment percent should be close to the actual estimate. Imagine it as a bullseye where the true percentage of Americans that are unemployed is this center target. We're trying to estimate that with our sample. We talked to 60,000 households, and even though that's only a fraction of the millions of households in the country, the sample statistic should be relatively close to that bullseye, that accurate number. Now, since this sample was randomly selected, we can make an inference about the whole population of U.S. households, but we couldn't do it about something like the worldwide population because we're not drawing our sample from a global perspective. We're only sampling houses from the United States. Let's say we have a study on teen social media uses from 11,872 randomly selected teens in the United Kingdom. In this sample, 20.8% reported using social media 5 or more hours per day on average. Can we generalize this result to teenagers in the United States? No, we can't, because when they select that sample, it's selected from teens in the United Kingdom. What's the largest population to which we can generalize this adults? Well, it is randomly selected. That's the thing that we look for. If it wasn't randomly selected, we can't apply it to anything. But since it is randomly selected, we can apply it to the population from what it's drawn. Okay, so we can apply it to adolescents in the United Kingdom that are between 13 and 15 years old. Now let's go back to that sleep deprivation experiment, where we had volunteers to start, and they were randomly assigned to one of two groups. One of the groups underwent sleep deprivation, and the other could sleep with no restrictions. Now, one of the key differences here is that this is an experiment because we have treatments that are randomly assigned. The other one, the Census Bureau survey, was an observational study, and that's going to lead to some differences in what we can conclude about this. So to start, the fact that we have random assignment, make sure that the two groups of subjects at the start of this experiment are as similar as possible before we impose the treatments of sleep deprivation versus unrestricted sleep. The response variable is their performance 2 days later. If we see a difference that's statistically significant, we are able to conclude that sleep deprivation caused this difference. When we have an experiment with randomly assigned treatments, we can make a cause and effect conclusion. Now, relating it to that other Census Bureau study, since these are volunteers to start, they weren't randomly selected from a larger population. We can't generalize this to any larger people or even ones that are like the ones used in this study. We can only say that sleep deprivation caused the difference in that performance. So there are really two different types of inferences that we can make. The first is an inference about a population, and the other is an inference about cause and effect. If we want to make an inference about a population, take the results of some sample and apply it to a broader population, we need to have random selection of individuals from that population. When we poll for a presidential election, we randomly select likely voters from across the country to get an idea of how the entire country is going to vote in that election. In order to make an inference about cause and effect, we need to have random assignment of individuals to treatment groups. So let's go back to that social media study of the teens in the United Kingdom. In addition to asking about their social media use, they also asked about sleep patterns, and the data showed that teens with the highest reported social media use had the most difficulty falling asleep and staying asleep. The difference was statistically significant. So based on that study, is it reasonable to say that increased social media use causes sleep problems? When you see this word here, we want to go back and read the question and ask ourselves, is this an experiment? Is this an observational study? We can only use the word causes when it's an experiment. These 11,872 subjects were randomly selected. They weren't randomly assigned to use social media for so many hours a day. So we cannot attribute that difference to a cause and effect relationship. Here's a table showing what kind of inferences we can make. It's copied into your notes packet. As to how to read it, were individuals randomly selected? If the answer is yes, then we can make inferences about the population. Were they randomly assigned into groups? If this answer is yes, then we can make inferences about cause and effect. We're going to close out this chapter with just some notes about how experiments and observational studies are conducted in the United States. They are very closely monitored, and there's a strict set of data ethics and morality that they need to abide by. So as for basic principles of data ethics, to start, all planned studies must be reviewed in advance by an institutional review board, and their main goal is protecting the safety and well-being of the subjects. Anyone who's involved in an experiment or study must give their informed consent before data is collected. You won't be a part of a study without knowing it and giving consent to be included. And all the individual data must be kept confidential. Only summaries of the data can be made public.